Barbra Streisand singing "I'll Get By," a live recording at a 1973 fundraiser for Daniel Ellsberg. Yoko Ono, the Beatles, John Lennon, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison also attended. We turn now to Senator Mike Gravel from Alaska. Yes, the Democratic presidential candidate today. In 1971, he received the Pentagon Papers from Washington Post journalist Ben Bagdikian, who in turn had gotten them from Daniel Ellsberg.
Let me just pick up where he left off, because it really, there's a lot of little vignettes, and I'll talk fast, but I want to get all the details out, because I know what you want to know is the inside skinny. You can read the broad lines, but it's what happened to both our lives at the time. That Dan calls my office. He talks to Joe Rothstein, who was my administrative assistant. My administrative assistant, I was down in the Senate gym getting a massage. I was on a table. And of course, you can't have staff come into the Senate. This is hallowed ground. So, into the Senate gym. So he's knocking at the door. He says, "I've got to see the senator. It's an emergency." And he works his way in to get into the massage stall. And the masseur pulls back a little bit, and he whispers down in my ear. He says, "Somebody wants to give you the Pentagon Papers." I said, "Man, where is he?" He says, "He's going to call us back." So, man, I get dressed up real quick. We bolt back to the office, and I'm sitting in my office waiting for this call. Along comes his voice. He says, "Senator, would you read the Pentagon Papers as part of your filibuster?" I says, "Yes." "Now please hang up." The reason for that is I have a background in intelligence. When I was 23 years old, I was a top secret control officer. I could classify and I could declassify, and I was 23 years old. So now, here are the papers coming at me. I had a sense of what they were, was a history. And of course, I had read what the Times had published, and so, lo and behold, Dan and I have other conversations. To tell you the truth, our memories are a little vague. He informed me about something that I didn't know, and occasionally I've done that with him when he was doing his memoir, Secrets. We spent there a couple of days. "Oh, is that your interpretation of what you think we did?" "Yes." "Well, no, that's my, oh no, we did it that way." And what happens, that's human beings. We all have a different read on some of the details. The long and short of it is, he called me in a few days, and he was angry. He's on the phone. He says, "Why the hell haven't you used the papers?" And I says, "Why the hell haven't you got them to me? I don't have them. I haven't heard anything." So he goes back to Ben Bagdikian, and Ben then contacts my office. Well, quite candidly, I didn't know who Ben was, but he wanted to get to meet with me. So we meet somewhat secretively on the front steps of the Capitol behind a column in broad daylight during the session. So Ben is standing there, we're talking about how we're going to move the papers across, and then out comes Bob Dole, who's one of my enemies, but we're on the same committee, and he walks up, and Bagdikian is slipping behind a column, so he can't be seen. So I get rid of Dole fairly fast, and so we go back, and Bagdikian had this plan. We're going to meet someplace out in the country, Rock Creek Park in the dark. Hey, wait a second, Ben. I got to tell you, I got a little more experience in this than you have. What we're going to do, here's how we're going to transfer the papers. You're going to come at 12 o'clock at night under the marquee of the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. At 12 o'clock, you park your car there. I will come up with my car. You open your trunk. I'll open my trunk, and I'll pop the papers in, and I'll race off. That's the way we'll do it before God and country, and they won't even know what happened. Well, what happens, a group of Alaska natives walk by. "Oh, there's our senator." And they all want to come up and talk with me. And I'm trying to peel them away. Well, I've got to run. And so I got in my car. We did that. We transferred the papers. I sped away, parked my car, came back in, and Ben and I had a coffee. I took the papers home. Where are you going to put them? I brought them home. That's the first time I told my wife at the time, Rita, I says, "I got the Pentagon Papers right here." And of course, the whole world was looking, trying to chase him down and catch him and get the papers. And he said, "What are you going to do with them?" "We're going to put them under the bed, and we're going to sleep on them. That's what we're going to do." We did. Next morning, I'm dyslexic, and so I couldn't read all those papers if it took me a year. And so what happened, I started calling staff in, and I said, "Look, you're going to come in, you bring a toilet kit, don't tell your wife what you're doing, you're just coming to the senator's house," and I met him at the door, and I said, "Look, I've got the Pentagon Papers. You come in, you can't leave until I leave. But I won't think ill of you if you don't come in, because there's risk that we don't know anything about." And so everyone to the person said, "Hey, Senator, let me have it." So about 4 or 5 people for 2 days were sleeping on the living room floor, and we would go through the papers. The style that I used in going through it, I was reading my little portion of it, the first part of it, which is the most historic and most interesting part. But the others I said, whenever you come across a name, come and show me the name. I would then read around the context and make a judgment, this should be excised or not. And when we exercised, we didn't just take a pencil, we took scissors and cut it out, so there'd be no misunderstandings. Now, I've got to bring the papers from my home to the Capitol. And so I buy 2 flight bags. You know those old flight bags without wheels? I buy 2 of those to honor the papers. And so I spend the money, pack them up with 2 bags like that, and so I'm going to take them to the Capitol. But now I'm concerned. So I call the Vietnam Veterans of America, and I say, look, I've got a problem. I need somebody to guard my office. And what I want the most disabled veterans you can find. Well, and lo and behold, I trudge in, and I wouldn't let my staff touch the paper. So I trudge in with my 2 big bags, heavy, and of course staff is walking with me, and the cop's there looking, why the hell's the senator carrying the bags and the staff is not carrying his bags? So we walk down to the end of the hall, and there are about 6, 7 soldiers in uniform, you know it, ponytails, badges all over, all in wheelchairs. And they could do wheelies, and all they could do, they didn't know what I had. All they said, "Go get him, Senator, go get him." I'm just about to cry with the commitment of these human beings, and they guarded the office. No, but they would have thrown their bodies at anybody that tried to break in. I had the papers. I go to the floor of the Senate. Now, I had made a deal with Alan Cran. I wanted to read in the filibuster. Now, I had a little bit of ego trip going on here. I wanted to break Strom Thurmond's record in filibustering. So, and the draft was going to expire at the end of the month. So I wanted to get 2 days, about almost close to 48 hours, break his record. Now, how are you going to do that? Most people don't know when Huey Long and those guys used to debate, what they do is they're drinking a lot of water, they pee right on the floor, right on the Senate floor. They make no mistake about it. But I'm a little more cultured than that. And so what I do is I rig myself up. I go to the doctor's office. I tell him what's going on, tell him when I got filibuster. And so he rigs me up with a colostomy bag with a little hose down to my ankle. And my administrative assistant's job is going to bleed the colostomy bag. Then it gets better than that. We now go to, I got to get somebody in the chair, because you can't control the floor if you don't control the chair. So I go to Alan Cranston, my closest friend. I say, "Alan, I need help." "What do you need, Mike?" "I got the Pentagon Papers." "Oh my God, Mike, you need more than help. You got problems." So he says, I said, "Alan, you don't have to do anything to risk. You don't have to touch the papers. You just get in the chair. By 5 o'clock, we'll turn around, and you just stay in that chair as long as I'm filibustering." And that was our plan. And so I said, "Now go down to the doctor's office and get a colostomy bag." He does that. And of course, I had a rubber mat. It was very interesting to go into the dynamics of that. So lo and behold, I come to the floor of the Senate. I'm trudging in with these papers. I put them next to my desk. And I was a freshman, so I was way on the side. And so Muskie had come up to me for some committee. We were on the same committee. He's talking to me. He looks down at these 2 black bags. He says, "Mike, are those the Pentagon Papers?" And I look up at him with a blank stare. It was just a joke on his part, but I'm looking at him, my God. So lo and behold, I'm a nice guy, so what I want to do, I know I'm going to be talking for a couple days, so I want to tell the staff of the Senate that, hey, you better call your wife because you're not getting out here shortly. And so what I do is I lay on a quorum call. Now, if you're familiar with the procedures in the Senate, a quorum call, they have to now start calling the roll. And there was only one other senator in the chamber. That was Griffin. The Democrats had gone to a banquet. The Republicans had gone home. And so there's two senators in the chamber. So I lay on a quorum call. Griffin walks up to me and he says, "Mike, what are you going to do?" I said, "Oh, I'm just continuing my filibuster on the draft." But I had always done that because Mansfield had set up a 2-track. Mind you, I filibustered for 5 months. It could only happen because Mansfield set it up without anybody seeing his velvet hand. And so I says, "Well, he says, "But wait, what are you doing at night?" I said, "Well, the draft's about to expire and I just want to really make a big show." He goes back to his desk and he's thinking. Then, of course, I wait 30 minutes to let the staff notify that they're going to be there a good part of the evening. And lo and behold, I make a unanimous consent to remove the quorum call. He objects. The minute he did that, I knew I had just been harpooned, and all I could think is in my mind, good men don't win. Good men don't win. I was so angry. He came up to me and he says, well, Mike, what are you doing? And I started swearing at him, you cannot believe. Well, by that time, he knew something was really afoot. So he went to the Republican cloakroom and said, stay away from the Senate, telling all the Republicans, I'm sending my troops to go out there and get the Democrats to come back from the banquet. Well, that goes on for till about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we could not get a quorum. I'm stuck. Rothstein comes up to me and he says, Senator, we're stuck. There's nothing we can do here. So I grabbed it, and he says, but our attorneys think they got a plan B. So we grabbed the bags, trudged back to the office again. By this time, the Vietnam vets are out there. They know there's something really serious afoot because there's a lot of media following us. And so I go in and sit down, what's our plan? Well, Senator, it's interesting. There's not much hope, but we do have one precedent that we could follow. And that's the precedent, believe it or not, the House Un-American Activities Committee. For those of you who know what that means. He says what they were doing is they would go around the country and they would immediately call a hearing so that they could grab somebody, pull them up, swear them in, and get them to talk. He says with that precedent, what you could do, and now mind you, I'm a freshman, you're chairman of a committee, a subcommittee. And of course that committee was the Buildings and Grounds Committee. So lo and behold, they say, what you could do is you could convene a hearing of this committee and you'd be still within the umbrage of the Senate. And so I said, fine, let's do that. But what we've got to do is we've got to have somebody testify. So we type up the notice that I'm chairman, I'm calling a hearing, slip it under the doors of all these senators who are not there, that I'm notifying them of the hearing, so that that's covered legally. And then the peace group calls up a Congressman Dow from Upper New York. He doesn't know what it's about. All they tell him on the telephone, Senator Gravel needs you to come and testify at a very important hearing. He gets dressed, he was an elderly fellow, gets dressed, comes down, and we convene. By this time, we're upstairs in one of the Senate chambers, committee room, and the whole phalanx of the media, and then Congressman Dodd comes up, and I'm sitting there with my two black bags, and my staff assistant, and the congressman, and I gavelled the meeting to order. Congressman, can I help you? Now, I understand you want to testify. He says, yes, I'd like to get a federal building in my district. And I say, Congressman, let me interrupt you right there. I know you need a federal building in your district, and I'd love to give you a federal building in your district. But I got to tell you, our government's broke. We don't have any money to give you a federal building. And let me tell you why we're broke. Because we're squandering all this money in Southeast Asia. And let me tell you how we got into Southeast Asia. And I haul out the papers, put them on the table, and I'm reading. Okay, it gets better than that. I read for an hour. Now here again, I'm dyslexic. There's no way on God's green earth I'm going to read it, but I'm reading it. Now keep in mind, I hadn't slept for about 3 or 4 days, and so I'm reading, and I break out sobbing. It's about 12 o'clock at night, and I am sobbing, and I can't get control of myself. Here's what was going through my head. A journalist, one of the networks the next morning, oh, this was a bizarre occurrence the night before. You know, Gravel was very bizarre. He cried. And so what I was sobbing over, I had been to Walter Reed a month or more before to walk around, and I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it emotionally to look at the wounded. And so I can handle macro problems, but not micro. And so lo and behold, I kept saying to myself, my God, I love my country. My country is committing immoral acts. We're killing human beings. There's no reason for it. And I'm sobbing. And of course, as a dyslexic, I'm reading rote. You know, I can follow the words in front of me. So Rothstein comes up to me. He says, in the understatement here, he says, Senator, I think you've lost it. And I'll keep sobbing. He says, and then he goes back, and I try to get a hold of myself, and I can't. And so he comes back, he says, Senator, why don't you put it in a record? And then I sobered up immediately and said, oh yes, I got power, I'm the chairman of this committee. So I move and ask unanimous consent to put all these papers that I was going to read at the record, to put them in the record automatically. Bang, they're in the record. That's how it officially got into the record of the United States of America. And obviously the media, by that point, they're out there going, really? So I put the papers back in. We're trudging back to my office. The media is following us. We want the papers. We want the papers. So we cut a deal with them. Look it. We got to copy the papers because we want to hang on to a set. And as we copy them, we'll turn them to you. You set up a pool, and then you go copy them and distribute them to the world. That's what happened all night long. And that's what made the Supreme Court decision moot, which was at 11 or 12 o'clock that very day. And what they did is they said you could not put on prior restraint. What you could do is if you published, you'd be at risk. And that's what happened. Those that had published took the risks, but they weren't prepared to take the risks after that. We scoured the country, and this is where the meeting comes in with Beacon. We scoured the country, could not find one major or minor or anybody that would touch the Pentagon Papers. We had some inkling that maybe MIT Press would. So with my staff, Fishman and one other attorney, we go to Boston. Whoever was handling it, and I don't recall at the time, he said, "Senator, I got bad news for you. MIT Press won't touch it with a 10-foot pole." And then I'm just crestfallen, like we're going to check how to get back to Washington. He said, "But I got some good news for you. Beacon Press has got the money, and they will publish it." And Gobin Stair and Bob West are downtown in Boston waiting for you if you want to come down and make the deal with them. And I said, let's go. And we had a press conference shortly thereafter, and that's when we announced that we were going to do it. I was a Unitarian even before all this happened in Alaska. But I can't tell you what I feel for the Beacon Press, for the Unitarians, and for Dan Ellsberg. Dan quoted and likes to say that when I went into service, I was going in to be a spy, but I wasn't getting any action, so I went in to be a combat infantry platoon leader. And on the patch on my shoulder said, "Follow me." Well, when I saw Dan do what he did, all I could think of, here's a guy that's walking up the hill, taking his life in his own hands, and the least I could do is follow Dan Ellsberg.
Former Alaska Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Mike Gravel, who got the Pentagon Papers into the public record. When we come back, the man who allowed the Beacon Press to take the risk of publishing the top secret documents. If you want a copy of today's show, you can go to our website, democracynow.org. Back in a minute.